Israel attacked Iran with unprecedented strikes on Friday, in which Iran retaliated by deploying over 100 drones toward Israeli territory. President Lee Jae-myung convened an emergency meeting and pledged to put the lives and safety of South Koreans in the Middle East first. South Korea's new commander-in-chief, President Lee Jae-myung, continues to put emphasis on securing peace on the Korean peninsula through dialogue and cooperation. By visiting and encouraging South Korean soldiers that are based near the border between the two Koreas on Friday. 3 special counsels have been named to officially look into investigations into allegations made against former President Yoon Suk-yeol and his wife and the supposed cover-up of the death of a Marine. Good evening. We begin in the Middle East, where Israel conducted preemptive strikes on Iran. Now, Iran hit back almost immediately with drone attacks. Our Arirang leads us tonight.
In the early hours of Friday, Israel launched strikes on Iran's capital, Tehran, targeting nuclear and military facilities.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat.
State media confirmed the deaths of several top military officials and scientists, including Mohammad Bagheri, chief of staff of Iran's military. General Hossein Salami, commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, and ranking commander General Gholam Ali Rashid were also reported killed. People in Tehran heard another round of explosions a few hours after the initial attack, with more being heard in other Iranian cities as well. The strikes come just days before scheduled U.S.-Iran nuclear talks in Oman. According to a statement released by the state-run news agency, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warned of severe punishment for Israel. Brigadier General Efi Defrin, chief spokesperson for the Israeli army, said Iran had launched over 100 drones toward Israel in recent hours, and that defense systems were working to intercept the threats. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio described Israel's actions as unilateral and stated that Israel had informed the U.S. it viewed the attacks as essential for its self-defense. Meanwhile, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the military escalation and called on both sides to exercise maximum restraint, warning that the Middle East cannot afford a wider conflict. Hyun-yeong, Arirang News.
And President Lee Jae-myung held an emergency meeting on Friday afternoon, emphasizing that the safety and lives of South Koreans are the most important issue amid escalating tensions in the Middle East. And the leader called on officials to implement measures to ensure the safety and well-being of Korean nationals in the region, and ordered officials to monitor oil, currency, and stock markets to prepare for volatility. The Foreign Ministry has also expressed a deep concern over the escalating situation in the Middle East and is communicating with diplomatic missions to ensure the safety of Korean nationals. The ministry said as of Friday, there have been no South Korean casualties. South Korean markets also closed sharply lower on Friday due to deepening tensions in the Middle East, a first loss after 7 market days of gains. The benchmark KOSPI slid nearly 0.9% to finish at 2,894, falling back below the 2,900 mark. Now, on the other hand, as the Middle East crisis is expected to drive up global oil prices and shipping rates, oil stocks and shipping stocks rallied. Now, the Korean won also took a hit, closing at 1,369.6. This is a jump of 10.91 compared to the day before, while it also went beyond the 1,370 range during the day. South Korea's new president appears to be aligning with his defense policy with a focus on peace through dialogue. Today, President Lee Jae-myung met with frontline troops and residents near the border with North Korea, just days after suspending loudspeaker broadcasts aimed at Pyongyang. Our presidential office correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports.
South Korea's new commander-in-chief, President Lee Jae-myung, visited the Army's 25th Infantry Division in Yeoncheon-gun County, Gyeonggi-do Province on Friday, his first visit to a military unit since taking office. Welcomed by some 50 service members, President Lee expressed his gratitude for their hard work and dedication to the country and inspected military facilities in the area.
앞으로 우리 군에 대한 처우나 군에 대한 대우들도 인식도 많이 바뀔 겁니다. 자부심 가지고 최선을 다해주기 바랍니다. 여러분들은 대한민국이 존속하기 위한 가장 중요한 역할을 하는 사람들이죠.
Lee reaffirmed his peace through dialogue approach during the visit, which came 2 days after suspending South Korea's loudspeaker broadcast toward the north. Pyongyang also appears to have halted its loudspeaker campaign as of Thursday.
싸울 필요가 없는 상태를 만들고 평화를 만드는 것이 가장 확실한 방법이죠. 그건 우리 같은 사람들이 하는 일입니다.
Later in the day, President Lee spoke with residents near the inter-Korean border who've been suffering from the loudspeaker campaigns.
Even with just one night of silence, I couldn't sleep yesterday, torn between relief and anxiety. I've developed insomnia, and sleeping pills don't even help now. Every time I think about it, I tear up. I'm just so thankful.
서로에게 득되지 않는 이런 걸 최대한 하지 말아야 되는데 어쨌든 상당 기간 안타깝게도 그런 일들이 있었습니다. 어쨌든 그 중간에 낀 여러분들이 제일 고생 많으셨어요. 남북의 긴장 관계가 좀 많이 완화돼서 또 경제 문제도 상당 정도 좀 해결되면 좋겠습니다.
In an unscheduled addition to his itinerary, the president also met with the head of Yeoncheon-gun County and local business owners to check in on their livelihoods, particularly the Rural Basic Income Project he introduced during his tenure as Gyeonggi-do Province governor. The program provides all residents in a designated area with a monthly payment of around $110 in local currency. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
Also on Friday, President Lee vowed for what he called a rationalization of business regulations through the lifting of unnecessary regulations that hinder growth. This came on Friday as he sat down with leaders of major conglomerates, Samsung, Hyundai Motors, LG, SK, and Lotte, as well as chairs of top business organizations at Yongsan Presidential Office, and vowed to support them. He said he used the word rationalization instead of easing or loosening, as there needs to be regulation in place to promote fair corporate competition. He added that the government and private sector need to work together to overcome the current economic crisis. The top office also said he stressed a need to go all out to overcome the crisis through practical and flexible trade policies amid U.S. tariff policies. A senior U.S. diplomat has reaffirmed the strength of the Seoul-Washington alliance as it marked the first visit of a high-level official to South Korea since its new leader was elected. The State Department's senior bureau official for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, Sean O'Neill, held meetings at Seoul's Foreign Ministry on Friday. He met with counterparts in charge of intelligence and North Korea affairs, as well as economic issues. This comes ahead of President Lee Jae-myung's attendance at the G7 summit next week, where he's likely to hold his first bilateral summit with President Donald Trump on the sidelines. O'Neill told reporters he's in Seoul to talk about security interests, including North Korea, and the prosperity of both nations. The Economy and Finance Ministry on Friday released its first economic evaluation under the new government. Now, according to the ministry, the South Korean economy continues to face downward pressure. Our Park Jun-han has the details.
The Ministry of Economy and Finance on Friday assessed that downside pressures on the economy continue to persist due to tariff-led uncertainties. This assessment comes in the ministry's Green Book for June, detailing South Korea's economic trends. The ministry, however, dropped increasing when describing downside pressure on the economy. Globally, the 90-day suspension of reciprocal tariffs and a trade agreement between the U.S. and China have eased some uncertainties. Domestically, a slight increase in consumer and business confidence following political stabilization and reduced global economic tension has prevented downside pressures from worsening, though they still persist.
I think when we first used the phrase downside pressures, we were primarily referring to internal uncertainty. Later, we noted that internal risks seemed to be gradually easing, while external risks had grown due to Trump's tariff policies.
The ministry pledged to swiftly implement a supplementary budget approved in May, while simultaneously preparing the second.
The ministry will continue to focus on responding to trade risks, including supporting our businesses affected by the imposition of U.S. tariffs. We will also accelerate the speed of development and implementation of a supplemental spending bill to revitalize the economy, stimulate consumption, and support vulnerable and small businesses.
When asked about how Israel's attack on Iran earlier on the same day would impact the economy going forward, the spokesperson said that regardless of the attack, downside pressure challenges persist. Park Junan, Arirang News.
The so-called 3 special probes are now ready to begin, with President Lee's appointments having been completed on a Friday. So after up to 20 days of preparation, investigations will officially start, focusing on allegations against former President Yoon Suk-yeol, his wife, and the death of a Marine. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young has more.
3 special counsels have been appointed and are gearing up to launch investigations into allegations made against former President Yoon Suk-yeol and his wife and the supposed cover-up of the death of a Marine. President Lee Jae-myung on Thursday night appointed former acting chief of the Board of Audit and Inspection, Cho Eun-seok, to investigate Yoon's declaration of martial law last December and related insurrection charges. Cho on Friday pledged to ensure that the work done by the police, the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials, and the prosecution would not be wasted. Min Jung-gi, former chief judge of the Seoul Central District Court, will look into allegations against former First Lady Kim Gon-hee, including stock manipulation and election fraud.
I'm aware that the case has raised a lot of questions from the public. Since this is a very controversial case, I believe it's important to remain objective.
Lee Myung-hyun, who previously served as a senior official at the Defense Ministry's prosecutor's office, has been tasked with investigating the death of a Marine during flood rescue operations in 2023.
I see it as my duty to uncover the truth behind this unjust death, and I'll do my best to get to the bottom of it.
The ruling Democratic Party and the Rebuilding Korea Party on Thursday each recommended 3 candidates, 1 for each special counsel position. Among those recommended, 2 candidates from the ruling party and 1 from the other party were appointed. The DP welcomed the swift appointments, expressing hope that they will meet public expectations and uncover the truth.
All 3 special counsels are seen as having strong investigative skills and standing firm against outside pressure. We hope they will stay focused on the people and work to uncover the full truth.
On the other hand, the opposition People Power Party strongly criticized the appointments, saying the government has shifted its focus away from people's livelihoods and is now heading toward political retaliation. They also pointed out that all 3 special counsels were recommended by the DP and the RKP, claiming political interests were put ahead of fair investigations.
The choice of special counsels clearly shows the political bias of the Lee Jae-myung administration. It suggests the real goal is to target the opposition and take political revenge.
Each special counsel will start with a 20-day preparation period. The full-scale investigations are expected to begin as early as the end of this month or at the latest in early July. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
A federal judge granted a temporary injunction against U.S. President Donald Trump's deployment of the California National Guard, which plaintiffs had argued violated the U.S. Constitution, giving the administration until next week to file an appeal. According to AP on Thursday, Judge Charles Breyer stated that Trump's military intervention in federalizing the Guard was illegal and that he must therefore return control of the unit to the governor of California. However, a few hours after, an appeals court put the order on hold until a hearing takes place next Tuesday, where the court will determine whether Trump followed congressional mandated procedure. This comes after California Governor Gavin Newsom filed a case with the courts on Monday, calling President Trump's military intervention against protests over a federal immigration policy in LA an assault on democracy. Over in India now, recovery efforts continued Friday in the wreckage of a London-bound Air India passenger plane that crashed almost immediately after takeoff, leaving just one survivor. Our Tae-young has the latest.
Air India said on Friday that 241 of 242 people on board a plane bound for London that crashed on Thursday were killed in what is thought to be one of India's worst airline disasters in decades. The Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner crashed in the northwestern city of Ahmedabad shortly after takeoff. According to reports, 169 Indian nationals, 53 British nationals, 7 Portuguese, and 1 Canadian national were among the passengers on board. However, one passenger, a British national named Vishvash Kumar Ramesh, who sat in seat 11A, miraculously survived the crash and was sent to a nearby hospital for treatment, saying he had no idea how he survived.
Yeah, he's fine. I said nothing else. He absolutely upset things. Yeah. Not just because he's our brother, but other people as well. Yeah. But there's 242 people in the flight. Yeah.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the scene of the crash on Friday and met with hospitalized people who had been injured on the ground. The National Disaster Response Force said that 81 bodies had been recovered by the morning, with the remains of the dead still being recovered. The death toll is expected to rise as the aircraft crashed into a residential area attached to a medical college. It's still unclear what caused the crash. However, videos that have emerged show the plane struggling to gain altitude, seemingly amid a lack of thrust or power. One cause that has been speculated on by some experts is the possibility of an extremely rare double-engine failure. The UK government has dispatched an investigation team to India to assist in determining the cause of the crash, as has the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, the National Transportation Safety Board, and representatives from Boeing, the aircraft's manufacturer. Chae-young, Arirang News.
It's Friday, which means it's time for arts and culture. We have our culture correspondent, Choi Soo-hyung, in the studio. Welcome, Soo-hyung.
Thanks for having me.
So, Soo-hyung, I'm so excited to see what your first feature report is all about. You lead the way.
Yes, Damia, you and I already knew that earlier this week, the Korean regional musical named Maybe Happy Ending just swept this year's Tony Awards.
Right.
This is one of the most prestigious musical theater awards in the world, and it proves the strength of Korean culture and Korean musicals. So I asked an expert about the factors behind its success and what this could mean for the future of Korean musicals. Here's the full story. On June 9th, in New York City, the Korean original musical Maybe Happy Ending became the star of the 78th Tony Awards. The musical won in 6 of the 10 categories it received nominations for, including Best Musical, Best Book of a Musical, and Best Original Score.
So many people worked hard with us for a long time. Seeing how happy they are now makes me feel incredibly proud. A lot of us poured our hearts into this project and gave it everything. That's one thing I can say with confidence.
Experts say the wins were significant as the musical succeeded without being a Hollywood-style blockbuster or based on a classic original story, both typical Broadway favorites.
Maybe Happy Ending isn't a typical Broadway show. It's not based on a classic story, nor is it a big-budget blockbuster. It's an original, unique, low-budget, and new way for a Korean musical, especially as it is set in a future Seoul. That's why its success is so meaningful. It took major honors like Best Musical, Best Direction, and Best Book, winning 6 Tonys.
The professor also noted that the musical's focus on the love between artificial intelligence robots reflects a philosophical advancement, adding significant value to its writing.
Hollywood usually focuses on AI and robots in terms of identity, like Am I Human? But maybe Happy Ending goes further by exploring love between AI robots, which is a more advanced philosophical theme. It blends universal emotions with Korean originality, creating a fresh musical model. By breaking away from familiar formulas, it showed that bold, emotional storytelling can succeed globally.
He stressed that what makes Korean content globally recognized is its deep cultural receptivity, not as a melting pot nor a salad bowl, but through a unique stage of fermentation.
1995 was the year Windows 95 launched, and soon after, Korea's high-speed internet network opened the door to global content, which today's creators grew up with. No other East Asian country absorbed global trends and universal values through content as freely as Korea did. Now, 30 years later, K-culture is in its fermentation stage and bursting out, creating something truly unique.
He said current hits are fine, but Korean content should focus on diversity rooted in humanism rather than simply following Western formulas for success.
Absolutely fascinating, Soo-hyung. Now, it looks like the usual formulas for renowned global award winners are, maybe starting to break down these days. Would you say the, trends in award selections are changing?
I wouldn't say the entire trend has changed or shifted, but in more details, the professor said even Broadway itself is hitting a wall, and because most of the major classics have been used already, so they're just running out of materials. So yeah, in that sense, maybe Happy Ending is significant because it presents a new breakthrough, bringing a brand new, fresh model for Broadway to follow, and this doesn't apply to this show. And think about Bong Joon-ho's Parasite and Squid Game or Han Kang's Human X. It's not so much that the US standards have changed, but it's more that Korean trends have already become global trends.
Like you mentioned, with the Oscars, the Nobel Prize in Literature, and the Tony Awards, it looks like Korea is setting major, milestones across the various culture fields. Now, the question is the 30-year fermentation stage that the professor mentioned the key to Korean content success, would you say?
Yeah, South Korea is very audience-friendly and with a strong bottom-up approach and putting people first, and creators usually listen carefully to what people think and what people said and just try to follow the taste and trends of their audiences. And the professor said that if maybe Happy Ending had been too full of heavy philosophical messages, it probably wouldn't have won the awards. In places like Broadway or Hollywood, they prefer, even if the theme is deep, about 95% of the content is still be fun and entertaining, because in the end, it has to be chosen by the audiences.
Right.
Yeah. And maybe Happy Ending also started getting attention through word of mouth via social media, and many other Korean content creators naturally follow that balance.
Indeed. Soo-hyung, thank you so much for coming in today. I'll be looking forward to every Friday for the culture segment with you.
I'll do my best. Thank you. My pleasure.
Rain has been falling everywhere today. The rain clouds have gradually spread to the southern parts of the Chungcheongdo provinces, and it is expected to rain in the Seoul metropolitan area tonight. Jeju will get as much as 180 millimeters of heavy rain, and the mountainous areas will receive more than 250 millimeters. The south coast will also receive more than 120 millimeters of heavy rain. As heavy rain is concentrated on Jeju Island and the south coast, a preliminary heavy rain warning has been issued for these areas. Gusty winds are also forecast between tonight and early morning tomorrow, so preliminary strong wind warning has also been issued. Tomorrow morning will start off at around 19 to 21 degrees Celsius in most parts of the country. Daily highs will move up to 30 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 27 degrees in Gwangju and Gyeongju. This rain will continue until next Monday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. Kim Dami, for all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.
To set the facts straight. Get Korea right.
서시. 죽는 날까지 하늘을 우러러 한 점 부끄럼이 없기를. 잎새이는 바람에도 나는 괴로워했다. 별을 노래하는 마음으로 모든 죽어가는 것을 사랑해야지. 그리고 나한테 주어진 길을 걸어가야겠다. 오늘 밤에도 별이 바람에 스치운다. 한국인들이라면 한 번쯤 들어본 시일 텐데요. 바로 서시입니다. 이 시를 쓴 주인공, 바로 윤동주 시인입니다. 안녕하세요. 반크에서 활동하는 권소영 연구원입니다. 서시, 별에는 밤, 자화상 등을 쓴 윤동주 시인은 한국인이 가장 사랑하는 시인 중 한 명으로 꼽히는데요. 가끔 윤동주 시인의 정보에서 오해와 오류가 보이더라고요. 제가 윤동주 시인에 대한 제대로 된 정보를 알려드릴게요. 대일항쟁기였던 1917년에 태어난 윤동주는 평생 한국어로만 시를 쓰며 민족의 아픔을 위로했던 시인이에요. 폭넓게 세상을 접하고 더 많은 것을 배우기 위해 일본 유학을 떠났던 윤동주는 1943년 7월 한국인 유학생들을 대상으로 민족 문화와 독립 정신을 고취시켰다는 혐의로 일본 경찰에 체포됐습니다. 1945년 2월 윤동주는 28세의 나이로 후쿠오카 형무소에서 숨을 거뒀는데요. 암울했던 식민지 시절, 민족에 대한 사랑과 독립에 대한 염원을 시로 쓴 윤동주 시인. 우리가 기억해야 할 아름다운 이름입니다. 한국 바로 알리기. 여러분도 함께 해주세요.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gen. The White House has confirmed President Donald Trump remains open to resuming direct communication with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, seeking to reignite the momentum of the 2018 Singapore summit. The White House stated Trump is still receptive to letter exchanges, even after reports that North Korea rejected a recent personal message that sent through diplomatic back channels. While Washington signals openness, tensions on the peninsula remain fluid. South Korea, under the new Lee Jae-myung administration, has paused anti-North Korea loudspeaker broadcasts, prompting a rare reciprocal silence from Pyongyang. But alongside this brief diplomatic window, North Korea continues to flex its military muscle, rapidly deploying a new 5,000-ton destroyer just 2 weeks after a failed launch. To unpack these latest developments and assess what lies ahead, we are joined online by Ambassador Joseph Detrani, former special envoy of the U.S. for the six-party talks. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
And also joining us is Pan Gil-ju, assistant professor at the Korean National Diplomatic Academy. Good to see you, Professor.
Good evening. Pleased to be here.
So let's start right away with Professor Ban. So North Korea's state media said today that it succeeded in relaunching its new 5,000-ton destroyer named Kanggun just 15 days after it failed its initial launch. What significance does this have for North Korea's naval power and broader military strategy?
Well, it is quite surprising news to me that North Korea has successfully launched the second destroyer by erecting and moving it to the Najishim yard in a very short amount of time. It was attainable under the total war-led integrated effort. If so, why did this effort matter to North Korea strategically? I would say that this was seen as vital to North Korea regarding the recently emerging outward-oriented strategy because of its multifunctional nature. These new destroyers allow North Korea to be better equipped with multifunctional capabilities. First, a maritime offensive around the northern limit line. Second, a nuclear offensive. And finally, an overseas offensive. First, new destroyers serve as well-prepared platforms to neutralize the NNL. North Korea has sent its naval ships down the NNL in an effort to neutralize the line. Amid these provocations, sea battles have often occurred. But North Korea had to lose the battle with South Korea due to its old-fashioned ships. If new destroyers are deployed on the front line as planned, how to fight is expected to be significantly changed. Second, these platforms help North Korea be more offensive regarding its nuclear posture. Kim Jong-un stressed the nuclearization of the Navy, which means that tactical nuclear weapons are scheduled to be armed with the new ships. Finally, new big ships serve as key assets to achieve North Korea's proactive naval strategy. Kim Jong-un ordered the military to organize the Blue Water Operation Fleet. In this sense, when these destroyers are deployed on the front lines, North Korea will be able to dispatch those ships overseas for various purposes, such as combined maritime exercises and naval support to other theaters. What does that mean internationally? It means that North Korean ships will be able to make combined exercises with China and Russia. To top it up, it means that North Korea is armed with deployable assets to support China in a Taiwan contingency. In this regard, North Korea's destroyer program has an impact on not only the Korean peninsula, but also regional and international security.
What about Ambassador Detrani? Are you on the same page? How do you think North Korea's this naval modernization would affect the overall security in the Korean peninsula?
No, I think this is a very significant development, and I agree with the professor. This is Kim Jong-un saying they want a blue water navy and projecting power and talking about the ability to not only the northern limit line, but to get out of territorial waters and to pose a threat, if you will, to regional powers, whether it's Japan or what have you, of launching cruise missiles, certainly tactical nuclear weapons also. So This is very significant. A blue water navy for North Korea would be a major plus for Kim Jong-un and the ability to project power and to potentially intimidate. And as the professor mentioned, to participate in joint exercises with China and Russia. So this is, I think, a very, very significant development on the part of Kim Jong-un and the DPRK.
Right, so these developments would definitely mean a lot in the whole region as well. Now, let's also turn to nuclear developments as well. Professor Bond, the IAEA has officially confirmed that North Korea is constructing a new nuclear facility in Yeongbyon in North Pyongan province, and it reportedly shows similarities to the Gangsan nuclear facility near Pyongyang. So if this third nuclear facility becomes actually operational, how do you think it will affect North Korea's nuclear productivity and the broader security landscape?
Obviously, the third nuclear facility is expected to help North Korea maximize the number of its nuclear weapons, which poses serious challenges to international security as well as security on the Korean Peninsula. In more detail, we need to take a look at the nuclear strategy that North Korea has recently adopted. As of right now, North Korea seeks an offensive nuclear strategy simply beyond a defensive posture. The inherent nature of nuclear weapons is supposed to be deterrence, which means a nuclear armed state is not expected to be attacked by an enemy. Likewise, until recently, nuclear powers have emphasized that their nuclear weapons have only defensive purposes by adopting the no first use policy. This nature could be harmonized with the discourse of a nuclear taboo that nuclear weapons should not be used because they are absolute weapons scared enough to destroy civilizations. As opposed to this nature, first, North Korea has abandoned minimum deterrence, which is defense-oriented, and instead adopted a maximum nuclear posture. In September 2024, Kim Jong-un disclosed his nuclear ambition that his nuclear weapons should be maximized rather than possessing a minimum level of nuclear weapons by ordering to increase nuclear weapons exponentially. So the third nuclear facility shows that Kim Jong-un's order has been visualized in a fast tempo. Second, similar to Russia, North Korea has neutralized the nuclear taboo by adopting an offensive nuclear strategy, particularly through the 2022 Nuclear Force Policy Law. As of right now, North Korea retains an offensive nuclear posture that it can use nuclear weapons for military purpose. All in all, the third nuclear facility makes North Korea's nuclear posture more offensive.
And that's a very concerning point for many of us. So on a related note to that, North Korea has previously showcased its nuclear material production capabilities, releasing footage of Chairman Kim Jong-un inspecting the interior of what is presumed to be the Gangsan facility. Ambassador, what is the intention behind these public displays? Do you think North Korea is positioning itself to use this capacity as a bargain chip in future talks with the U.S. like what Iran did?
No, having dealt with North Korea on the issue of highly enriched uranium for a number of years, certainly during our negotiations in the six-party talks, North Korea is establishing itself as a nuclear weapons state. And North Korea's goal and ultimate ambition is to be accepted as a nuclear weapons state. So what Kim Jong-un is doing now is making it very clear to the international community, indeed to South Korea and the United States, they are a nuclear weapons state, and they're building more nuclear weapons, and they're building more nuclear weapons facilities for fissile material, highly enriched uranium. Like you mentioned, the Gangsan, this would be the second highly enriched uranium facility at Yeongbyon. So this is very, very significant because it's telling us this is not a negotiating tactic per se, although this is something on the table because we want complete and verifiable denuclearization. But we're speaking of the Korean Peninsula here very clearly. But this is also Kim Jong-un saying, we're not giving up on nuclear weapons. we're going to build more nuclear weapons. And we're going to do that. So accept us as a nuclear weapon state, get into arms control negotiations with us, and we can live peacefully together because it's a deterrent. We're never going to use these weapons. It's a deterrent. So yeah, I think it's very significant. And I think Kim Jong-un is messaging to South Korea and the United States, certainly, that they're not going to give up their nuclear weapons and they're going to persist. That doesn't mean we should not continue to pursue complete and verifiable denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. That should continue to be our goal.
So North Korea seems to be continuing to reaffirm its stance as wanting to be acknowledged as a nuclear weapons state. That seems to be very clear. Now, as North Korea continues to, accelerate its nuclear development, attention is now turning to, South Korea's new administration, the Lee Jae-myung administration, its early approach to the issue. Now, on June 10th, President Lee used the term denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula during his phone call with Chinese President Xi Jinping, instead of former administration Yoon's phrase, which was North Korea's denuclearization. How should this shift in language be interpreted, Professor Ban?
To start with, we need to dig into the differences between the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and the denuclearization of North Korea from the diplomatic and security perspectives. The denuclearization of North Korea is the term to clarify who should be nuclearized, which is North Korea, obviously, in a situation where South Korea does not have any nuclear program. And furthermore, all American tactical nuclear weapons were withdrawn from the Korean Peninsula in 1991. To top it off, North Korea has taken advantage of the term denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula as part of the gray zone strategy in order for American strategic assets not to be deployed on the peninsula. Meanwhile, the new Iraq administration lays out the diplomatic formula, which is a future-oriented comprehensive strategic alliance with the United States, easing tension with North Korea, and neighborly friendship diplomacy with China. The re-emergence of a term denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula seems to take all these new approaches into consideration. When it comes to North Korea, the new administration appears to create the environment for inner Korean talks by reusing the term denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, which North Korea prefers and has used for its own purpose. Second, the new administration seems to send a signal to China that Seoul will change its diplomatic posture with Beijing by using the term that Beijing uses. Third, the reuse of this term also seems to send a message to the United States in the sense that Washington has often used this term in order to press South Korea not to be denuclearized. In this sense, the re-emergence of this term seems to show that the new administration will not seek the option of its own nuclear armament. All in all, the change of the term hints at how the new administration will transform the diplomatic security policy.
So it definitely is a interesting distinction in terms of language. Now, as for the Lee administration's first moves on the North Korean regime, the government has halted anti-North Korea loudspeaker broadcasts for the first time in a year. And in response to this, North Korea also appears to have stopped its broadcast targeting the South. Professor Ban, can this be interpreted as a positive reaction from the regime? And what implications could this easing of tensions have on future ties?
Well, since the new administration has just been launched, I would say that this is the transitional period of how both South Korea and North Korea are checking each other's intentions and responses. To put it another way, it is the period of psychological warfare and strategic competition between the two amid an effort to ease tensions on the Korean Peninsula. Meanwhile, North Korea seems to positively respond to the new Rock administration's changing posture in the sense that Pyongyang halted anti-North Korea loudspeaker broadcast, as you noted earlier. So the next question should be oriented to how sustainable the efforts to ease tensions are reciprocally. In this sense, the next phase should be made timely. One of the options for the next phase would be the resume of hotlines between the two, followed by working level in inter-Korean talks. In addition to this effort to ease tensions, the key nature which allow tension to grow should be paid attention to. It is North Korea's nuclear program which poses its existential threat. So the efforts to ease tensions should be made simultaneously with efforts to functional deterrence and international coordination for denuclearizing North Korea. To that end, the new administration should make an effort to not only talk to North Korea, but also step up coordination with an ally, security partner, and like-minded countries. In a nutshell, the efforts to vitalize Korean relations are needed, but at the same time, those efforts should not be made by sacrificing deterrent capabilities, alliance, and international coordination.
So we should always keep deterrence in mind, especially even though we want to pursue dialogue again with North Korea. Now, let's circle back to Washington-Pyongyang ties. North Korea's focused media has reported that Pyongyang rejected a personal letter from U.S. President Donald Trump addressed to, of course, Chairman Kim. The White House has not denied this report. Ambassador, what might be North Korea's intention in rejecting the letter, and how do you assess the prospects for the resumption of the dialogue?
So let me go back to your first question to the professor about denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. I mean, this is language we used in the joint statement of the six-party talks on September 19, 2005. And this is the language we used in Singapore. You cited Singapore summit. This is the language we use because this is comprehensive language, and it meets Kim Jong-un, it meets North Korea's needs. We're talking about the Korean Peninsula, denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And I think that is the correct terminology. So I applaud Lee Jae-myung using that terminology, because that is accurate terminology that we've used since 2005, right through the Singapore summit in 2018. Look, you mentioned the letter. I've dealt with the New York Channel. That's sort of what some of the reports are, that the New York Channel would not accept a letter from President Donald Trump. Let me just say very clearly, I personally think, my personal view is Kim Jong-un would accept a letter from President Donald Trump. They have a very special relationship. And there are many ways of getting that letter to Kim Jong-un, not necessarily through the New York Channel, because let's be very candid about it. The New York Channel is taking orders, marching orders from Pyongyang. And if they're told to stand down on dialoguing with the United States, they will stand down. And I think that's what's happening now. But there are other ways of getting a letter to Kim Jong-un, certainly a letter from the President of the United States, who has this relationship with Kim Jong-un. So yeah, I think the media has sort of gone a bit askew with Kim Jong-un refusing to accept a letter from President Donald Trump. I think he would be very receptive to a letter from President Donald Trump.
Well, lastly, we go to our final question as the U.S. leaves door open for potential resumption of the letter diplomacy with North Korea. President Lee Jae-myung is set to attend the G7 summit, of course, starting June 15th. And this comes amid concerns of South Korea being sidelined. What kind of messaging and cooperation should be prioritized in terms of trilateral security cooperation between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo? Professor Ban.
Well, before going for a deep dive, we need to take a look at where the trilateral cooperation is as of right now. The trilateral architecture between South Korea, the United States, and Japan has been formalized through the 2023 Camp David summit. What happened was that all the leaders of the three countries who were there at Camp David have left their positions. With this insight in mind, first of all, new three leaders need to gather together with an opportunity of the G7 summit and need to reconfirm this trilateral cooperation. Second, the inherent purpose of the trilateral coordination should be clarified. I would say that it is aimed at the two axes, countering North Korea's nuclear weapons and maintaining Indo-Pacific stability. When it comes to North Korea, the three leaders need to reconfirm their coherent policy of seeking a denuclearized North Korea. regarding the coordination of the Indo-Pacific, they need to policy how to achieve this objective technically in a situation where Trump administration has a different idea of what the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy should focus on from the Biden administration. In short, the Trump administration is eager to narrow down agendas on the Indo-Pacific, which used to include a wide range of items such as law politics, and then put more emphasis on countering China. Meanwhile, this posture needs to be coordinated with South Korea and Japan early enough, particularly in a situation where South Korea needs both security diplomacy and inclusive diplomacy with non-like-minded countries such as China. I would say that how much they are able to step up the Indo-Pacific cooperation is linked to how they are able to tackle North Korea's nuclear programs. That explains why the Indo-Pacific matters to South Korea's security as well. In this sense, it is not an easy task, but an important puzzle to be addressed in a timely manner.
So it's certainly a very critical moment, and the G7 platform could be a good opportunity for South Korea to reinforce its relevance in regional security discussions as well. And we will be closely monitoring the situation. But we'll have to end our discussion here at this point. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights tonight, Ambassador Detrani and Professor Ban. We appreciate it so much.
Thanks for having me.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.